Hey everybody, Eric Rennie here with Philippe J. Fournier for this week's episode of The Numbers. And Philippe, it is hot in central Canada. We've got some heated electoral contest to talk about. But how are you doing? We didn't do an episode last week, so it's been 2 weeks since the...
Yep.
Why don't you update our listeners and viewers on the exciting life that is Philippe's life?
The
runner of 338 Canada and various other things.
There's always a little mix of sadness and anticipation for a college semester that starts very soon. My semester starts on the 15th, so that's next week.
Oh boy.
So when August 1st arrives, you're always like, okay, this is it. It feels like fall, but it's like 40 degrees outside. So, but you know what? I've been trying to rev up the machine, get ready for fall. It's going well. What about you, Eric? How are things in Percé?
They are hot, and it's not
rare.
often that it gets very hot here, but it is very hot here, and that's fine. But, I'd taken a couple of weeks off this summer, which has been nice, and now it's going to be smooth sailing on into the fall and to the winter, and looking forward to it. So let us get into some of the things we're going to get into. And the first is going to be that Battle River Crowfoot by-election. We're now this is the last episode before that by-election. It's taking place next Monday, so we will talk about the results next Tuesday. A greatly anticipated episode. So let's just delve a little bit into the by-election. So, we've seen there's been a couple debates. We've seen the change to the ballot and how people are voting. Some word about the advance vote. Seems to have been, it's a pretty seamless procedure to mark a name down on a ballot rather than an X on a big ballot. So I guess the question is at this stage, has anything changed in our priors, our view of this by-election, now that we're in this final week?
I don't think so, Eric. We're all trying to find a story here, and I know many media outlets are trying to find a story here. It's not unreasonable to think that Poilievre will do less well than Damien Couric did. 83% is tough to beat, but it's a stretch to say, oh, Poilievre is in trouble. We don't see that, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that the story will be what happens after that. Will the Conservative caucus welcome Pierre Poilievre and stay with him if he continues to have numbers like he has in recent weeks? Now it's summer polling, so we can wait until the fall. But I'm trying to find interest in that by-election beyond just the numbers, and I really can't do it. It doesn't seem to catch the imagination. The step is too high. It's not even close to being close, is what I mean. But what about you, Eric? Do you see anything in there that pokes your curiosity?
It does seem like a little bit of a box-checking exercise, even though there's no boxes to check this time.
Not this time.
But in the sense of that he's just going to get his seat. Now, what will the number be? Folks like us are going to obsess over it a lot.
Yes, we will.
It probably won't matter unless it's a really bad number. If it's less than 50 or even less than 60, I'd say would be pretty problematic.
Yeah.
But it's unlikely to be that much of an issue. If he gets 72, that'd be down quite a bit from last time, but it's still 72% of the vote. If he ends up getting 85%, well, okay, he's a leader of a party and he's doing better than before. So my priors really haven't changed all that much. I think that the fact that they've moved to the write-in ballot kind of it takes away some complications. Maybe it adds others, but I think overall it's going to have less of an effect. From what we've heard, there are 2 booklets for people who are voting. One includes all of the candidates, and then another booklet includes all the candidates affiliated with a party. So it does seem to have neutered a little bit the longest ballot committee, but also the 2 or 3 legitimate independent candidates who are locals running to actually be an MP and not as part of this protest. But, there's been noise about whether Bonnie Critchley is going to get a lot of the vote. I don't really see that to be very likely. Maybe she might be able to do better than Maybe the Liberals, I suppose that's a possibility.
Yeah.
If a lot of Liberal voters decide that they can go over there to try to get that kind of momentum going for another candidate. But I really don't see any scenario that ends with Pierre Poilievre not winning comfortably.
Yeah.
Which just sets us up for a potential surprise. But I'm kind of feeling that this by-election is going to be a anticlimactic kind of result when we see it on Monday night.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Again, I'm more interested to see what happens afterwards. And you and I love elections, and we love by-elections. We spent hours talking about them, and we did it the last stream last night. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. We're not going to do a live stream for this one. It'll be late. The count is going to be slow, not because of the big ballots, but because of all the names and all the different names that will be on ballots. And that will be interesting. And we talked about this. How many ballots will be rejected? How many will be just not clear enough or just spoiled? So that could be interesting. But overall, I would not be surprised to see Poilievre in the 70 to 80 range. And then he gets his seat back, and then he's welcome back. And then we have a fall session, a normal fall session. So we'll see.
I am very curious when we start talking about where he runs next. Because he has committed that Damien Carrick will return as the MP, assuming he wins in the next election, which means he'll run somewhere else. And that actually lets me segue to another thing I wanted to talk about. So last week there was a podcast. It's the Beyond a Ballot podcast that Jenni Byrne did with Rachel Siegel, I believe. Who is, let's just say, on the conservative side of it has Amanda Alvaro and Rachel Siegel, who are the two co-hosts, and one's a liberal, one's a conservative. Jenni Byrne sat down with the conservative, and kind of said a few things that were a bit surprising. One was, no real regrets. Wouldn't change a thing. I'm exaggerating, but not a lot of regrets on how the campaign unfolded. Another that she will not run the campaign next time. Yeah. That she's advising, but more in a casual way. And then this one, which I really thought was kind of shocking, that one of the few regrets that she had was that they did not see that Pierre Poilievre was in danger in his riding and run him somewhere else. I found that to be rather a shocking thing to say. Because
hindsight is 2020, huh?
Well, there's hindsight, but imagine a scenario where in early March, the Conservatives have done some polling in Carleton and they see, our guy's not going to he might not win this riding. Let's run him somewhere else. What do you think those headlines are saying in early March or mid-March that the leader of the Conservative Party has to run somewhere else because he's afraid of losing his seat? Yeah. Can't imagine that's a headline anybody would want.
His seat of 20 years. That's the thing. He won how many? 7 elections in a row?
4, 6, 8, 4, 6, 8,
11,
15, 19,
7.
21, 7.
And so it was not, had they switched Poilievre and sent him to rural Manitoba or rural Alberta instead, that would have been a huge story. And it would have changed lots of the narrative in the early campaign. So it is interesting for Ms. Byrne to say that. It's just, really? Would you have done that? Because that would have changed the dynamics of the early campaign, where the Conservatives, they were trailing, but it was close. So, I don't know. Poilievre running in Alberta for a by-election is not out of the ordinary. What is out of the ordinary is that he lost the election and he lost his seat and he's staying. That is strange. That is rare precedent with Bonnie Crombie exception, right? And she might not last very long. So we'll talk about that later. But So what do you think? Do you think the strategy changes for the Conservatives once Ms. Byrne? Well, she says she's out. She's advising a bit on the outside. Do you think they changed their tone, their strategy? Do you think they need to? It doesn't seem like they are changing gears.
No, we're not seeing too much of it. You see it now and then, once in a while, where Poilievre is giving interviews to CBC, for example, trying to pivot a little bit. So I don't know. It'll depend on who ends up maybe taking up the space that she was occupying, even if she's still kind of on the fringes of it. The question I think that we'll be asking really until the next election is whether the Conservatives do need to do any changes, right? Because they got 41% of the vote.
Yeah.
Was it 41, 42?
41.3.
41.3. Very good.
Yeah.
Which normally is enough to win. But all elections are context specific.
Oh, yeah.
41.3% was enough to win a few elections ago, not enough to win in 2025.
Yeah.
Can you assume that if the context is different in the next time, can you still maintain that 41%? That is a different question entirely. The Conservatives did well in the election. When you think about how opposition parties often do, they usually don't do as well as the Conservatives did. But I do think that changes do need to come. Not dramatic, radical changes, totally different direction.
Yeah.
But to keep those folks around, because they haven't stuck around. We've seen it from the polling that's been done post-election, that the Conservatives have lost enough that they don't have enough anymore to just hold their vote and win the next election.
Their best poll right now is Abacus data at 40%, and we'll get into the numbers. We had 3 polls in the past 2 weeks. I think we expect a léger very soon. Abacus data, 43 Liberal, 40 Conservatives. This is the best poll for the Conservatives. Palace data, 43 Liberal, 38 Conservatives. And then this Nanos tracker, which we always have a little fun with because it fluctuates. Here's the thing. We said how many times that it fluctuates, and then suddenly it doesn't fluctuate that much. It's been very stable over the course of the summer. This morning, the update, which covers the second half of July and the first half of August, 45 Liberal, 32 Conservatives. Now, okay, 32 is the lowest. 40 is the highest. Let's say an average of 37, 38. The Conservatives don't win an election, even with their ballot box bonus. Even if you give them 1.5 points more than the polling average, that's not enough. And so I'm guessing they wait for the honeymoon to be over and they hope that the NDP gets back on its feet. That's one strategy. The NDP, the polls for the NDP, 8 from Abacus, 8 from Pals Data, 12 from Nanos. I think the last léger was 7. So not a lot of movement there. Steady as she goes for the Liberals. If you wait until the honeymoon is over for Carney, but it's still a two-man race, a two-party race, it's a tough road ahead for the Conservatives. Even though, as you said, they did really improve their score.
There's 2 factors there that are kind of out of their control as well. One is the NDP.
Yeah.
They are at 8% to 12% in these polls, as you said. That is not good enough for the Conservatives, right? No. Even 12%, that higher one, that is also the poll where Conservatives have the worst results. They need the NDP to be back over 15, 16, 17%. Yeah. Who knows what's going to come out of the leadership race? Maybe someone will win that leadership race that really galvanizes support for the party, and they get back to their 15, 16, 17%, or even higher. But that is a lot to ask for the NDP right now in the present context, where their caucus is very small. They do not have a lot of resources, so they would almost need to naturally grow their support, double their support over the next little while, because they're not going to really have many means to do it themselves, right? So the Conservatives banking on that, the NDP getting back into the game, that is a lot to expect, right? But then there's also the thing you just said about the honeymoon for Mark Carney and it ending. Eventually, it will end. We haven't seen any real indication that it's ending now. The Liberals are leading. Mark Carney's numbers are still good.
Yeah.
But Mark Carney can still decide to have an election whenever he wants. That is another factor here. Is he going to be like Justin Trudeau, where he waits too long, where he's got no more runway? Brian Mulroney, for example, in 92, 93. Carney could decide that when he starts to see that things might be turning, that the next 6 months are going to be worse than the last 6 months. This is a minority government. There's no guarantee that the next election's in 2029.
Yeah, well, There would be a pushback, though. There was in 2021. Justin Trudeau was blamed for throwing the country into an election campaign early and not having a real plan. You remember those that first 2 weeks of the campaign in 2021, in August 2021. My God, has it been already 4 years?
Yeah.
And the numbers, the Liberals went to election because they were in majority territory, and then suddenly they weren't. So, yeah, we'll see if they choose to go that route, but it still contains a lot of risk. But what you said about the honeymoon again, it's important to, I think, to just stress these numbers, because from a tracker on Nanos that fluctuates. So preferred prime minister this week is 52 Mark Carney, 24 Pierre Poilievre, so a 28-point lead for the prime minister. And if I go back to early June, these are the numbers for Mark Carney. 50, 52, 53, 52, 52, 51, 49, 51, 52. So no movement, no statistical movement. And for Pierre Poilievre, it's 24, 23, 23, 25, 25, 25, 24, 23, 24. So the minds have not moved. the opinions have not moved over the course of the summer, with Pierre Poilievre being less in the limelight, although, as you said, we did see him on the mainstream media. When those numbers don't move again in the fall, let's say, how much leeway, how much of a leash will Pierre Poilievre have? That's going to be the story of the fall, I think, because it's not going well with the United States. Maybe you've seen the news, the negotiations of a new trade agreement and tariffs. It's not going that well, and yet it looks, at least the polls say, that Canadians are hanging in there with Mark Carney. Will that still be the case in January? And when Pierre Poilievre gets his vote of confidence, because he probably will. So.
Well, that is going to be the big question, because he is out of the House and the House isn't sitting, and so Pierre Poilievre isn't really in an environment where he looks prime ministerial. Because he's trying to win a by-election, for example. You see he's on the debate stage with 10 candidates, and like half of them were talking about Alberta separation almost.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
You know, when he's back in the House for a few months, do his numbers improve? Because if he remains at 24-25%, with a big chunk of the vote that's kind of lost has gone to the don't knows or none of the aboves.
Exactly.
But if he still is at 24-25% by the end of the fall, that's going to be a problem. If he's getting it back up to 30 and Carney's come down, then I think that'll be enough. But that is the most kind of damning personal number, I think, for Poilievre, because it's one thing if you look at the Abacus numbers, 42% positive impression, 41% negative impression for Poilievre. He still has a decent amount of people that like him. But if the comparison, he does badly on the comparison, an election is a choice between different alternatives. And so that is going to be the biggest challenge, I think, for Pierre Poilievre, to get those numbers up against Carney, not his own personal numbers, because people know, they know him. They now have seen enough of him. They have a view. So that is going to be the biggest challenge. And you just mentioned Carney and Trump and the difficult negotiations. If things are a choice, there's a binary choice between who you're going to blame, Trump or Carney. So Carney has a 40% positive impression, 29% negative impression in Canada, according to Abacus. Abacus has been doing Donald Trump as well.
Yeah, for a while now.
13% positive impression, 75% negative impression. Justin Trudeau didn't have numbers like that when he resigned. So I think for the time being, people are giving Carney a pass because they know that that Trump is kind of a jerk, and it's not going to be a fair fight anyway.
Yeah. Again, from Abacus, what's the best party to take on several issues? And one of the number one issues, Donald Trump and his administration, 58 Liberal, 21 Conservatives. So it's not even close. I mean, that means that the Conservatives do not even get their score in that poll. There's 30% of don't know or unsure, But 58 Liberal, that means that for now, again, Canadians think that Mark Carney and the Liberals are best positioned to do that. But there are other issues where the Liberals are vulnerable. You see immigration is a big issue right now. 60% trust more the Conservatives, 15% trust more the Liberals. So there are issues where the Conservatives can lean on. It's just that right now the top issues in the country, it's perceived that the Liberals are best positioned. So for now, I mean, this is, the cycle continues. It's going to be a fun fall. We don't have elections coming up very soon, but we have leadership races and we have a vote of confidence for the leader. And so this is going to be interesting to follow.
All right. That was just Newfoundland, Labrador, Yukon, and Nunavut erasure there by Philippe.
Oh, okay. Sorry. It's Terre-Neuve is in November, right?
When we don't see polls, we assume that the elections are coming. This is the problem. Anyway, so we'll have those by-election results next Monday, and we'll go through them on Tuesday. Hopefully they're finished, and we'll have full results that we can chat about on Tuesday. Let's hope for
That's right.
Speaking of by-elections and leaders, there was a pretty big one in Quebec last night, and you and I did a live stream. And you know what? And we did it in French, and for a French language live stream in the summer about a by-election, did all right. There was a decent audience there, which tells me that there is some interest in this. We saw that RDI, LCN, both did kind of live coverage of the by-election. I looked at all the newspapers this morning, all the websites, all have that as one of the top stories. First, set the table. What was the Arthabaska by-election?
Okay, so Arthabaska is a riding south shore of the St. Lawrence between Quebec City and Montreal. It's in the centre du Québec. So for those who know, it's a bit east of Drummondville, Victoriaville, and its surroundings, right? It's mostly rural, a small town. Victoriaville is a small town, then rural farms and farmlands and stuff. This has been a CAQ seat since 2012. So the first election the CAQ ran in, it won Arthabaska, and then it won it again with a bigger margin, and then it won again with a bigger margin, and then it had 52% of the vote in 2022. And then last night, the CAQ got 7%. It lost 45 points. And who won it? It was the Parti Québécois, Alex Boissonneau, a former Radio-Canada anchor, radio host. Who's from the region. That won it with 46% of the vote. It's the first time the Parti Québécois wins that riding since 1998. Coincidentally, the last time the PQ won a majority government in Quebec City. And the Quebec Conservatives and had their leader, Éric Duhaime, also a former radio host in Quebec City, got 35%, a decent result, but a disappointing one for the Quebec Conservatives who were expecting a victory. I have many thoughts on this, but Eric, your thoughts this morning about this by-election.
Well, it's the third one in a row that the Parti Québécois has won. There's been 3 by-elections in Quebec since the last election. PQ has won them all, and they've all been gains. And all gains from the CAQ. And that is kind of what is expected to happen in the next election if the kind of numbers hold, that a lot of the seats that the CAQ won last time would go over to the PQ, and it would be a seat like this. But the movement here is, as you said, is just remarkable. The PQ gained 36 points from the last election. They only had 10% in 2022. Now they had 46. And the CAQ dropped 45 points. That's a massive swing. That's an 81-point net swing.
Yeah.
There's almost no seat. There probably is actually no seat in Quebec that if you apply that swing, the CAQ does not lose that seat. Obviously, that is not how things are going to play out, but it was just a massive movement against the CAQ, with the PQ getting most of that vote. The Conservatives got a little bit of it. They jumped 10 points, which is pretty respectable. But we had seen some polls that was published by the PQ, by the Conservatives. Now, maybe they were, well, I'm not going to say that they fudged the numbers, but maybe they were pretty happy with the numbers. That they suggested it was a polarized race between the two parties, that the CQ wasn't in it. And that might have contributed to a further polarization because Éric Duhaime is very unpopular. He, when Léger always does the kind of gauge of popularity of leaders. And Duhaime is always like on the second or third sheet because his approval rating is so low. but he's the only one who also has virtual no unknowns. He's got like 60-70% who don't like him. So he is a polarizing figure, and it seemed to have benefited the Parti Québécois. But I don't think that takes away from the win here because, as you said, they haven't won here in a long time.
Yep.
It's more of a conservative area to begin with.
Yeah.
And, the PQ is coming off wins in suburban Montreal and in Jean-Talon, suburban Quebec?
Yeah, suburban Quebec City. It's Sainte-Foy and Sillery. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I don't know. It's definitely a big win for the PQ and a disappointing result for the Conservatives who wanted to get their leader into the House or to the Assembly. He hasn't been.
Yeah.
They've never won a seat, as you said, many times since 1935.
They will, though. I mean, we'll get to that in time. There's a general election in Quebec in October 26th, and it would be very surprising if the Quebec Conservatives don't win the seat this time around, but they lost this one. It was a risk by Éric Duhaime to run there. But even though we saw this coming, and we mentioned this last night, but the story here, the story is the Parti Québécois winning, but the CAQ losing 45 points. The CAQ losing, basically, they lost 85% of their vote in one of their safest and most reliable seat. I saw many people do comparisons with Justin Trudeau and the Toronto St. Paul's loss, the La Salle-Verdun loss, and I was sent
Cloverdale, Langley City, everybody's
this one
most memorable by-election that's ever happened.
But it's just that I get the moment and the message is similar, but this is far, far worse.
Yeah.
Like, this is the CAQ getting wiped out. Like, completely wiped out the map. And I'm not exaggerating. It's 0 seats. And I would even add 0...
I think they'd actually owe seats to the Quebec people.
Probably, they would have to take
go
back
in
seats
time and remove some of their MNAs. It'd be
but there are no safe seats anymore. Even the former ADQ seats, which the CAQ gobbled up in 2011 and then kept. It's very important to say they kept most of those seats on their way to power in 2018. We're looking at a potential wipeout. And François Legault has said many times, and he appears to be sincere. People around him see that he means it, that he wants to stay, wants to fight. But then I go back to you, my historian friend. Has a sitting premier ever went into an election and went from being premier to winning 0 seats? I just don't think it's happened, ever.
There are a few cases.
Of a premier winning nothing?
Yeah, they were about 100 years ago.
Okay.
There was Simon Fraser Ptolemy in British Columbia, and the last Conservative government in BC.
Yeah.
They got wiped out, completely wiped out
from power
in the
to wiped out.
Yeah, but there was a little thing called the Great Depression that probably had an influence in it. They came in 1928, and I think it was in 33 or around there. They went from how many seats they won to 0. There was the United Farmers again, 1935 in the Great Depression. They got completely wiped out, but their premier who had won the last couple elections had been replaced due to a sex scandal, if you can believe it, in early 1930s. And then there might be a couple other ones. I mean, there's also Richard Hatfield, 87. That's the one
true.
where they
was he
not
gone
only were they wiped
election,
out,
though?
they got the other party swept.
Yeah,
but he was there. So there has been some cases.
Okay, that's the example. Okay, that's a good example, though.
I forgot about Hatfield. Yeah.
Wow.
But even, the PCs got wiped out in 87.
Yeah.
But they still got like 20-something% of the vote. The CAQ might, with these kinds of numbers, could be in the low teens, right? They could go from having 41 to somewhere, they could lose 30 points. So to me, there are 3 kind of questions that if you're a close observer of Quebec politics, you'd have these questions too. But if you're looking on the outside in, you might have these questions. The first one is, does this cause a change within the CAQ government? Yeah. Does François Legault stick around? Can he stick around?
Well, that's the thing. It's his party. Justin Trudeau hung on for dear life for many, many months. You had to wait until his finance minister resigned on the morning of an economic update for him to then think about it for 2 weeks and then leave, right? So the CAQ would have to change the name of the party right?
Well, they should. On the ballot, it said Coalition Avenir Québec, équipe François Legault.
Yeah, that's
François
what I
Legault's
mean.
team.
Yeah.
Probably not something you want when you're so unpopular.
But the thing is, there's no logical way that he can come back. He himself is not popular. His party is not popular. They're heading for historic defeat. I mean, leaving now would not necessarily fix things for the CEQ, but it could give it some time and some space to breathe. It's just that. I mean, I'm looking forward to see the next polls. This, as you said, this was a highly visible and mediatized, high attention from the media by-election, in which the turnout was above 60%. This is like a general election turnout.
Yeah, it was amazing.
So a lot of people paid attention to this. Would you be surprised when we do get the newest Quebec polls, maybe at the end of the month, that the CEQ is at 12% or 13%?
It would not be. No.
So there's a message here that the CEQ is done. Now, François Legault has announced, he's announced weeks in advance, that there will be a cabinet shuffle.
It's going to fix everything. Everything gets fixed with a cabinet shuffle.
It's just that there has not been major cabinet shuffles at all since the CEQ took powers. It's been 7 years. And so we're kind of eagerly waiting, okay, is this going to be a real shuffle or just shuffling the deck chairs on a Titanic? But I wonder what he could possibly do to make Quebec voters says, oh, okay, oh, that's interesting, we'll give it a chance.
They just need a different transport minister. I'm pretty sure, if there's someone who's in charge of sports and tourism gets promoted, everybody's going to open their eyes about. Anyway, we'll see. It does seem like the only thing that you could, like when you're in this much trouble, you kind of do need a shock treatment, right? A shock therapy. Don't think a cabinet shuffle is going to do it. You kind of need a change of the leadership. But maybe Legault just wants to. I can't even. If Legault was thinking well, I'll take this hit, which is, people were making that argument for Justin Trudeau, which now in retrospect seems like the dumbest kind of argument that was being made at the time now when you think about it. But people could make the argument that Legault should take this hit and someone else can build and pick up the pieces. But I'm thinking that if that happens, the CEQ is done. It goes the way of the Union Nationale. It just disappears.
I mean, it'll go faster than Union Nationale. Union Nationale stuck around for 2 decades. This is going to be, it's like, if there was a general election this October, the CEQ would disappear. Mm-hmm. And then where do you get money? Where do you get candidates? Where do you get, it's just going to
start over with something different.
Yeah, exactly. So.
All right, I had 2 other questions. The next one.
Yep.
Pablo Rodriguez.
Yeah.
He's second in the polls. He's got this big bump. Everybody seems to like him. Big momentum for the Liberals. They're up 5.5 points.
Yeah, almost
That's
triple.
Not nothing, but it's 9% of the vote.
Yeah.
So if you're on the outside looking in thinking, wait a minute, I thought the Liberals were doing well in Quebec. Carney just did well in Quebec. What's going on here? Why 9% for the Quebec Liberals?
Okay, I'll say there are many things here, but first, there was no expectation for the Quebec Liberals there. They knew they were not going to do well. I think they thought they would get double digits, not 9%. But it's I would say it's too early to draw hasty conclusions on the Quebec Liberals. That result is disappointing, but it's not crushing either because there were no expectations. It's not like the CEQ or Quebec Solidaire that just have terrible results. The Liberals is just okay, it's bad. It's not great. It's bad. But let's wait. There could be more by-elections. Seriously, after this and after a shuffle in September, I think many CEQ MNAs may feel like they have to spend more time with their families. And so we may get other by-elections late fall or maybe even in the winter, and then we'll have a better idea. But for now, Arthabaska, the Quebec Liberals were never going to win Arthabaska. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it wouldn't be on the list for the Liberals. They've won it before, but that was when the party was very different than what it is now. But I did kind of think that they would do a little bit better than this. So I think it is a bit of a reminder that the Liberals still have a lot of work to do, especially in Francophone Quebec, and that when there is a bigger kind of drama at play, the Liberals might be a bit out of it in some of these seats. So, but I think that it still it does, for me, pump the brakes a little bit. When I see, those polls that had the Liberals within a couple points of the Parti Québécois, I see these kinds of results and I'm thinking, okay, maybe the Liberals still are, maybe it was a little bit of a sugar high from the leadership race. Now, the last question, that if you're on the outside looking in, this is a big win by the Parti Québécois. They won by 11 points.
Yep.
That's a comfortable victory here. 46% of the vote. Strong result in this riding. They've won the last 2 by-elections. They're leading in the polls. Is this a sign that Quebec is enthusiastic for a sovereignty referendum and that the march to independence has begun?
I would say that sovereigntist voters believe again. So they are. That's for sure. Federalist voters have been slipping slipping at the switch, at the wheel, as we say. I speak Franglish this morning. There's been sleeping at the wheel because they didn't need really to. It was not an issue, Quebec referendum, for the longest time. So maybe they've been sleeping at the wheel. Maybe they'll wake up and say, "Oh, hang on here." The polls on sovereignty that we have seen, we had a one from CUP, which we had that takes us back to a long time ago,
Blast
right?
from the past, yeah.
But the other, Main Street, Palace, and Léger all poll on sovereignty in June, and there's no significant movement, not up and down. It just fluctuates around the mid-30s. So it doesn't seem like it, but the enthusiasm towards sovereignty is definitely up. And Monsieur Plamondon, the PQ leader, doesn't seem to ease the pedal on it. So we'll see if it polarizes the electorate more if we approach the election and the PQ is still going full speed towards the third referendum. But for now, I think people are just waking up that it's a possibility that in a few years we'll have a referendum.
I think that it's also important to remind people that this was a very special kind of context, right? Because there was this battle between the Conservatives and the PQ, which is not a usual battle. And it's not really what we're kind of expecting the next election to be about. It's not going to be about whether it's the PQ and the Conservatives who win or form a government, because the Conservatives aren't. They're at 14% of the polls. They're not anywhere close to forming a government. Yeah. So the PQ benefited quite a bit from a anti-Duhaime movement, right? So Saint-Pierre Plamondon can't really take these results as a reflection of that it's not 100% pro-PQ vote. This 46%, right? There's a chunk of it that was an anti-conservative and, lesser of two evils kind of thing here. Now, how much of it was that? That's hard to say.
Few points,
But just based on kind of the profile of the riding and the context we've seen in the polls, PQ should have been getting more like 35% of the vote, let's say, rather than 46%. So I do think there was a chunk of voters here. Quebec Solidaire, they went from, nearly 10% to just 1.5%. I think there was a little bit of a borrowed vote for the PQ in this riding. That might not exist next time if Duhaime isn't running here, and also won't exist everywhere in Quebec, because in most of Quebec, the Conservatives are not a factor.
Yeah, what you just said, it's true that this will not be a race between the Conservatives and the PQ, except in Quebec City and its surroundings. And this is going to be very interesting to follow, because the PQ will have many campaigns in the next campaign. They will have to campaign in Quebec City against the Conservatives. They will have to campaign against the CAQ in the suburban Montreal, against the Liberals in the Outaouais region and Estrie. And so they will be attacked on all sides in all three regions. It's just the PQ is strong basically everywhere. Maybe not out of Montreal, but they're strong everywhere. And so they will be the target of the others. But so far they're doing great. Whatever as we said with Poilievre in the fall, whatever they're doing is working. It's just that we don't know if it'll end up like Poilievre. I don't think so, but we'll see.
We also do have some by-elections that are taking place in Prince Edward Island today in Brackley, Hunter River, and Charlottetown, Hillsborough Park. Obviously, we don't know where the results is. We'll chat a little bit about them next week. Could be interesting to see what they will be. But, by-election season. We've got another one in Manitoba coming up in a little while, too. So some things to chat about. Okay, how about a number of the week? What do you got?
Something very boring, we mentioned it. My number is 0. There's it's 0 seats for the CAQ. I took a lot of flack in June when I published that projection, and I felt uncomfortable with it. When I had the CAQ at 0 seats, obviously the confidence interval stretched right into the positive numbers. But I took a lot of flack, and I was like, yeah, I know I'm uncomfortable with it. And then I see this by-election, I was like, okay, yeah, 0 seats makes sense.
Yeah,
they can't win.
Show me
anywhere.
the math. Show me the math where they win some seats.
Show me the map and point to. This is a CEQ stronghold, or is it? So this is my number of the week. 1 year from now, you and I will cover the Quebec election, and we may see a party getting wiped out. So they have 1 year to turn the ship around.
Boy, mine will also be related to the by-election. It is 59.46%. This was the turnout, at least that is the current turnout estimate from Elections Quebec in Arthabaska. So one incredible result for a by-election. This would be a slightly disappointing number for a general election. This is a great one for a by-election.
Yep.
And it makes me wonder what the turnout will be in Battle River Crowfoot. Will it be anywhere close to this? I don't know, but that is an impressive showing by voters in Arthabaska. So our hats off to them for going out in the middle of the summer, a hot summer, to go cast a ballot in a summer by-election. People were saying, like François Legault, look at the disrespect for democracy, putting a by-election in the middle of the summer, in the middle of the construction holiday and all this. People are going to vote if they care. And they cared. And I think that's a great thing.
Yep.
All right, so that'll be it for this week. We'll have our next episode of The Numbers next week, and we're going to have an episode of Les Chiffres later in the week, so we'll go over a little bit of these results again in French with a little bit more recul, a little bit more space between them. And if you want to support us, you can go to thenumberspod.ca. We will have a special episode probably next week. We'll do something then. And, of course, you get early access to our episodes. You get ad-free access to the episodes, both audio and video, and you can join our Discord. The Quebec channel was hopping last night. I looked at it afterwards once we were done. People were chatting about the by-election.
In both languages.
In both languages, so it's a great thing to see. So thenumberspod.ca if you want to support our little project. So, Philippe, we'll chat later this week, and hope you cool down. Well, you're in your nice air-conditioned basement. I'm suffering here without any air conditioning, but we'll chat later in the week when hopefully things will cool down.
You have the ocean. Just go dip in the ocean.
Okay.
Merci beaucoup tout le monde. Merci beaucoup Éric. Talk to you soon.